So, regional workforce housing. Does anybody here think this housing and lack of housing and affordable housing is an issue in any way whatsoever in our community? Yeah. All right. Just wanted to get that established. So today we have a multi-speaker program focusing on our workforce housing needs and the regional housing study that convened multiple partners to work together to understand the regional picture, identify the needs of our workforce and broader community, and develop a series of solutions, most importantly, solutions. Guiding us through this conversation today is Stacy Caldwell, CEO of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, and Allison Swedner of the Community Collaborative of Tahoe Truckee, two great leaders in our community. You're up.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I am reminded every time we come out into the public to speak about this how important it is to everyone in our community, and to see so many faces out there who've been working alongside us throughout this process. I just want to thank you because it's hard work. It feels a little bit sometimes like being in the hot seat, taking on such a hairy, difficult, challenging conversation that is not just relevant to our community, but across the country. So with that, I want to preface this conversation with, at the end of this presentation, we will not have solved our housing problems. Okay? Okay, good. But I do think we've done an amazing job that's actually worthy of, just honoring and taking pause in how this community has approached such a difficult conversation. And so with that, I'm going to frame the way the morning's going to go, give you a little insight into where we are today, and then I'm going to hand it off to some storytellers who we've invited to share some stories that bring kind of the human side of the housing issue to our community. And then from there, we're going to roll into a really interesting presentation from Allison that we call a pachachka, and I'll share what that is in a little bit. Then we'll go into a wrap-up, next steps, kind of follow-up where we're at, how this rolls out, and then some Q&A. So does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Awesome. Good. So to give you some context about the Community Foundation, we've been here for 18 years. Our fearless founder, Jim Porter, ended up having to look up in a dictionary what a community foundation was when he was first offered the challenge of raising dollars with William Hewlett to bring philanthropy to our community. And ever since that time, our community has showed up with lots of gifts to build what we have is a community foundation that supports the different nonprofits that are represented in this room, and at times takes on some of the tough discussions as a community and works to really guide and lead and provide a neutral kind of convening and gathering experience. And so what happened is our Community Collaborative, which is a program within the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, Allison and Sarah direct, represents 45 different health and human service agencies that focus on the individuals and families within our community and works to help strengthen their missions. In November of 2014, they convened a conversation around housing. The reason why they convened this conversation was because housing was becoming such a main topic of their conversations. They were finding that they couldn't get to their mission work without first dealing with the housing issue within those families. After 2 hours of conversations with both counties, the town, and other leaders who showed up to help us think through, an ad hoc group was formed to really nurture the conversation further along and make sure that it didn't just fall flat after a 2-hour meeting. From that conversation that was convened, many of you in this room, leadership with Tony Lashbrook, Phoebe Bell, Allison, we had Teresa, we had Amy Kelly from our Family Resource Centers, both in Truckee and North Tahoe in that room, really thinking about how to advance the conversation around housing as a region, not just as a town, because we recognize that we're an ecosystem and decisions that get made in one community within our region affect other communities. So once we realized we needed to convene a regional conversation, the next step was what? Well, maybe it was actually WAT. So many of you realize WAT was Workforce Housing Authority of Truckee, Tahoe. A lot of people think that that nonprofit went away. What I'm here to tell you is there's a really heroic story involving Breeze Cross and the Frischman Hollows complex, and the fact that WAT is still alive, it's just dormant. Maybe it's waking up, we don't know. But that conversation led us to, there was a 2008 needs assessment that was planned on the books. But because of the economic downturn, that needs assessment kind of got left behind while everybody, bailed water individually and collectively. And so there was an agreement that the study was really the first step in collectively looking at the housing issue together. So after almost a year of raising money to get the consulting fees and the plan in place, to do the right kind of outreach associated with a study, to embed community engagement so that the study didn't just sit on a shelf somewhere, and to really engage a variety of stakeholders in figuring out the scope of work, from the Contractors Association to the Board of Realtors to the school district, making sure that we really talk to everybody. Are we on the right path? Is this the right scope of work? We embarked on the actual study this last January. So the study itself is 6 months. Our engagement at the Community Foundation is 9 months. I'm sure there will be some, rippling effects from that. But at this moment in time, we are 5 months into a technical study involving Bay Area economics. It's actually Bay Urban economics, but I keep saying area, and I don't know if it's just because I don't want to say urban. I'm just trying to Bay Urban economics. So they are our consultants on this project, and they're looking at the housing elements across the different jurisdictions. They implemented a survey that you'll hear about here in a little bit, where we engaged community members from across the region, English, Spanish, employers, employees, and then they're also writing the final report. They've looked at different case studies, and so that'll be the very technical piece that goes along with it. That's going to allow our jurisdictions to really get to work and figure out what policy pieces they should focus on individually and hopefully collectively. And then on the flip side, what Community Foundation and the Community Collaborative have done is we've put together a community outreach and engagement plan, and you're going to see elements of that today, from the storytelling to the presentation that Allison delivers, and then some of the next steps that we'll discuss in a little bit. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first storyteller, and before I do, just to give you some insight, we've had some amazing stories that have been captured. Anytime we go into a public forum or a public meeting, we make sure that we bring leaders from the community to really share how this is impacting them, either professionally or personally. And each time we do that, we get a different angle of the story. And so one of the partners that we have engaged in this process is the Truckee Tahoe Community Television. They have been incredible partners. They come, they're here today. They're streaming it live. Thank you so much. They've been capturing these stories. They spliced and diced them into individual little videos that we plan to, share. Actually, they're already shared on their website, our website. If you have a platform that you would like to share it on, I encourage you to grab them. They're really powerful. If I could just go through the list of names, you would just be amazed, and each one of them so different. And so with that today, we're going to really take the storytelling down the path of how the housing issues affect our employee and employment base. And so with that, I'm going to invite Christy Thompson up with MWA Architects. She also serves on a housing committee for CAT, and we're really excited to have you. She has 3 to 5 minutes. I'll be right up front timing you. This is how it flows and goes, and we stay on time. So thank you, Christy.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. I've been actively working with Kat and my committee to try and discover the real situation here with housing for a couple of years now. And today I'm really just speaking as an employer of 17 employees here in Truckee, and how the housing situation is affecting us personally as a company. We're a small employer, but I mean relative to, say, Squaw or some of the ski areas, but we're still small. We're small enough that we can't really do a whole lot other than just pay our employees a living wage. But that's not been entirely enough to solve the problem of housing for them. In the last 4 years, we've had a real hard time finding people from the area to employ because it's been a real tight market right now with construction industry booming. So we've had 6 people that we've brought in from out of the area, and the first thing they ask is, okay, where should I look for housing? And like, wow, there isn't any. These are young professionals. They're making a decent wage, 2 to 3 times minimum wage, and they're having a hard time just finding a place to live. I think that 2 of the biggest problems are that 65% of the homes in our area are unoccupied vacation rentals. They're sitting there waiting for people to rent them. That means our workforce can't live there. And the vast majority of the homes or living spaces that we have are single-family homes with 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. Well, a single young professional doesn't want to rent a whole house, nor could they afford to. So they're looking for an apartment, and there just aren't a lot of apartments or condos or small housing units available. So several of them, 2 in fact, 2 years ago, moved into the apartments up by North Star because that was the only thing that was available in their price range when they moved into the area. And they immediately learned that living there was not for young professionals because everybody there was ski bums. They were loud, they were partying all the time, there were fights in the parking lot, there was people getting arrested. It was awful for them. They're like, this is supposed to be this quaint, sweet community. Who are these people I'm living next to? It wasn't appropriate for them, and it was affecting their work because they were coming to work exhausted, frustrated, stressed out, etc. And one of them subsequently has moved to Reno because she could get twice the amount of square footage for less money and has a safe, quiet environment where she feels much more comfortable. That's frustrating to me. Now she's commuting up the hill. We've only got 2 people that are commuting from out of the area, so we're actually beating the odds from what the study is saying. 40-some-odd% of our workforce is commuting from out of the area, or maybe more, 60%, I think it was actually. So we're beating the odds, but that's, we're paying a living wage. And I think the main thing from my standpoint is there's just not enough for single professionals who need a smaller unit of housing. And thank you very much.
Next we have Christian Bennett. Christian, are you in the room? I wasn't sure if he was a latecomer, so he hasn't arrived. That's fine. Next we have Chief Adam McGill. The chief is going to talk about the housing situation as it relates to our police force. Thank you for being here.
Apologies for those of you who were at the forum the other night. You get to hear it twice. Policing, you are always better off when the police officers that serve you live in your community, when they're your neighbors, when they're your coaches, when they're your volunteers in schools, shopping in your stores, etc. Your quality of life goes up. Versus, you probably have never thought of it, but just imagine if the folks policing you and your community are coming from somewhere else. I mean, picture that, a force coming from somewhere else into your community to police you on what you think is your values and your norms, etc. And unfortunately, we face the same challenges that we've heard from everyone else. And currently, 60% of your police employees live outside of, and when we do our statistics, we're including North Shore, Sierraville, Portola, the Summit, we're basically saying Reno or the other side of the summit. So 60% of those folks live outside the area. Just a few years ago, we were holding steady at about 50-50, but in the last 18 months, that's started to change. So the very essence of community policing, which we hear a lot about in the news right now, is that expectation that that's not Officer so-and-so or just a blue suit. That's Joe. He lives around the corner. His or her spouse, you see him at schools and PTA and so on. And that's what we want to deliver to you. But unfortunately, just in the last 6 months or so, we've lost 2 officers to the Placer County Sheriff's Office who they felt was more competitive and that they could live, get the kind of home they desired elsewhere, but still be within driving distance to that jurisdiction instead of ours. So if that trend continues, we will become what most of the Bay Area, and many of us have come from there, right? Almost all of those cities are policed by people that don't live there, that are commuting 90 minutes or more. And we hear and see some of the struggles that those kind of communities have. And that's not what we want to become. We don't want folks coming here maybe bringing their values, their norms, their expectations of where they live and their neighborhood into ours, which is very different. Truckee's a very unique place. So you may have not always thought of that, and we, of course, we pay a living wage too, fairly competitive for the policing industry, yet a single income family most often cannot afford to live here as well, or they're frequently moving, which is, we all know, is a challenge as well, that they can rent somewhere for 6 months, but then they've got to go move on to somewhere else. So all of those create hardships for our employees as well. So the missing middle, so that we often speak about. Okay.
Adam, when you said imagine that, my brain just went to Reno 911, so I don't want to imagine that. Stop it.
We don't authorize the type
Thank you. Our final storyteller today is Pam Hobday, who will be sharing some insights from the Truckee Chamber and Truckee Tomorrow. Thank you, Pam.
Have to begin, we have to sing happy birthday to Porter. Come on, everybody. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jim. Happy birthday to you, and many more. Let's give him a big round of applause. Big milestone year. You're welcome. I'm sure. The Chamber would like to give you a historical perspective on housing economic development, beginning with our story of Truckee Tomorrow. Truckee Tomorrow started in November of 2010. So think about 6 years ago. How old were you? How old were your children? What was going on downtown, Steph? It was a really different economic scene 6 years ago. We had lots of stores closing. It was a revolving door. We would walk and talk with our members, and it was a scary time. So the Chamber, in collaboration with the Town of Truckee, the Downtown Merchants Association, and Nevada County, thank you, Ted, for being part of that then, formed a coalition, a partnership, an initiative, which we called Truckee Tomorrow. And it was really an opportunity for us to try to address the economic issues at that time, which really were recruitment and retention. Not much different from today. Okay, and that's how the interlacing of housing is, recruitment and retention is really involved in the housing issue. We had 4 meetings and then decided what we really needed was to implement an economic development action plan. And we hired a group out of Sacramento, the Strategic Economic Research Group, to help us do that. And our core group met in 2012 again, 2 years later, to develop a short list of 4 economic development strategies. And these strategies were the overwhelming strategy that Truckee Tomorrow leadership group really chose was that we wanted to fund a place-based marketing and brand campaign. So given that, we needed money. And thanks to the town of Truckee, if you'll remember in 2014, with amazing leadership from staff and the town council, in my private business, I represent and work with lots of cities and counties. And what our town did at that moment in time is really unique. They provided $2.5 million in funds available to grow sustainable jobs, increase the tax base, and to diversify the local economy. The chamber applied and with a 5-0 vote were unanimously approved to fund this $75,000 towards our place-based marketing effort. But there was a caveat, a challenge to us to create a public-private funding group to match the $75,000. Well, we're really proud that the chamber not only did that, but exceeded the expectation, and we were able to raise $138,000. The chamber's been very, very focused on this place-based marketing initiative, and I bet most of you have attended our public meetings, and of course you see our brand, and that official launch is coming very soon. But know that our major emphasis is still on recruitment and retention. And we believe that because of the work we've done in the last 6 years, that this housing problem cannot be solved in isolation from looking at economic development. A little bit about the chamber. How many of you knew that we have 610 members? Isn't that amazing? 610. And that 83% of our members, 83% have 10 or fewer employees. So we represent the big guys, hospital, largest employer, but 83% of our members have 10 or fewer employees. And our role, we believe, is to be in the region a collaborator, a convener, a communicator. We like to be a catalyst and a broker. And we represent our 610 members. For the housing initiative, John Minacchio, as a collaborator, has been participating in the working groups. The chamber has continued to get the word out about the regional housing study, encouraging employers and employees to take the survey, to attend public forums, and as a convener, we're the lead producer of Good Morning Truckee. And the chamber board, as well as the planning committee, acknowledge the need to educate everyone on this important topic. But most importantly, to end, our board is absolutely convinced that we cannot effectively accomplish our primary mission. And in fact, our primary mission will be adversely affected if the workforce housing crisis is not addressed. So, as your chamber board and representing so many of you here, we are committed to continuing to be an active participant with other regional leaders to identify and work toward innovative solutions. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have a brief presentation for you. So when we were asked to come here and present on the study itself and where we were at, we were asked not to throw a lot of statistics at you this early in the morning. Many of our public forums involve a 25-minute presentation with our consultants who are quite technical. And we realize you just haven't had that much coffee. So we're going to wake you up with this next presentation. Allison Schwedner has agreed to accept the mission of a pachachka. So does anyone in here know, or anyone from the architectural sector know what a pachachka is? So it comes from this, thank you.
6 minutes, 24 slides.
20,
20 big ideas, short amount of time.
20 seconds each.
20 seconds.
So too short. Until you don't have enough to say and then it goes really too long. So it's 20 slides, 20 seconds each, automatic rotation. So you're really forced, to your point, to kind of really cover the big ideas as quickly as possible so that it paints a really broad picture of where a project is. So in the architectural world, those kinds of presentations probably can go quite long with all of the details. And so this is a Japanese form of presenting in which it just kind of keeps it big so that people can then engage in the conversation. So with that, good luck.
I know a little bit of pressure. Great. So I guess play. Wish me luck, everybody. Thank you. Great. So our study area includes the North Tahoe Truckee area, including the I-80 corridor from Floriston up to Donner Summit. Much of our data is based on census blocks, so actually include a broader geographic area. However, our focus area is really the area defined by the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District boundaries. Within those boundaries, we know that we have 17 special districts, 3 counties, and 1 town. And each of those jurisdictions has their own legal requirements and regulations, and several which specifically impact housing. I'm just going to sit in the silence. Thank you to no one behind. So ballpark, we know that the town of Truckee has about 16,000 residents. In our region, we have about 30,000 of us. And on any given weekend in the summer or the winter, that number can swell to over 100,000 individuals, many of which are competing for housing and places to stay. Another dynamic that impacts our community is the seasonality of our employment. And so what that looks like for many local families is that many of us are working as much as we possibly can in the winter months and sometimes in the summer months to save enough money to make it last throughout the entire year, which can be a very difficult dynamic for us. We know that we have approximately 33,000 housing units. 80% of those are single-family homes. And we know that single-family homes, as we heard today, are not always the best solution for many of our local residents, including seniors and single parents. And they're also very land-intensive housing units. We've also heard this morning that 65% of those 33,000 housing units sit vacant most of the time, which basically means of those 33,000 housing units, about 35% are available for all of us in our local workforce. And it's really the dynamic of being in a second home owner economy. Half of our housing units, so half of those 33,000 units, were built prior to 1979. And so for those of us in the real estate market, or for those of us who have looked for a house lately, we know you walk through a lot of fixer-uppers and a lot of houses that are quite inefficient and a lot of cute older Truckee homes. But a significant dynamic impacting our housing issue. So I'm going to pause and talk about affordability. And so according to our census, over half of our population falls somewhere between extremely low to moderate income levels. And according to HUD affordability definitions that looks at income and cost of living, a family of 4 at the extremely low income level should pay no more than $88,000 for a house. A family of 4 at the moderate income level should pay no more than $350,000 for a house. We know that our median housing price is at least $500,000. That's a very significant gap, and that's a quite conservative number. We have a number of different sources. We've seen upwards to $700,000 for a median home price, but we're really concerned about that gap. How that impacts us is that we know that 50% of our local folks can't afford to live and work in Truckee, so 50% of us commute out of the region for work. We know that 60% of our workforce actually commutes in for other communities to work in our region. So again, we spoke about this morning, and it really impacts us. So in addition to looking at our data, we wanted our study to include the voices of our community, the voices of all of you. So we really relied on the Chamber, the Family Resource Center, and our resorts to do the heavy lifting around disseminating a survey. We heard from over 1,600 employees and almost 400 employers, which was amazing to hear from so many of you. We heard that 76% of our survey respondents are overpaying for housing, which means that they spend more than 30% of their income on housing every month. We also learned that a third of us are paying more than 50% on housing a month, which does not leave a lot of wiggle room for other expenditures. When we talk about opportunity, we know that we have 7,400 more housing units left to build when we look at the housing elements from the town of Truckee, Placer County, and Nevada County. And then we will be at build-out capacity. So really, it's a call to action for us. We have 7,400 more opportunities to really create the kind of community we want to create for future generations. When we look at current development, we know that we have 526 housing units in the pipeline. Of those, 434 will be at market rate, which we are concerned that we can't afford or our workforce can't afford. And of those 526, 92 will be income restricted. So solutions, I know we're all very eager to talk about solutions. We're at this point in the study right now where we are beginning to talk about solutions. And anytime we engage our community in solutions, we're definitely not lacking creative ideas. We've heard great ideas ranging from incentives for second homeowners to folks wanting to rent out their garage space to help pay for their mortgage and their rent. We've looked at 4 case studies at communities that are similar to ours to see what's worked in these communities around affordable housing and what hasn't worked around workforce housing. I feel like that's more than 20 seconds. We've had focus groups. We've talked to our neighbors who have participated in housing programs. We are having dialogue with employers to see what's worked around employee retention and recruitment. We are talking with policymakers to see what's worked around incentives and regulations and really learning from you all about how we need to craft specific solutions. One of the primary ideas that's emerged is forming a housing entity, which could serve one function or many functions. We've talked about this housing entity possibly managing affordable housing units or attracting outside capital for specific strategies. We've talked about a housing entity aligning the housing elements from all of our just different jurisdictions and providing some kind of oversight. We've also heard really creative ideas around tiny houses and co-housing for seniors. And really starting to explore what would that look like if we had higher density housing, and do we have the appetite for higher density housing as a community? So what? So we were really committed to this study not just being another study that sits on a shelf in our office. We're committed to that at the foundation, and we really ask all of you to join us in that commitment. We recognize that there's no silver bullet solution, that the solutions will be multifaceted, and really address some of those key areas that we've talked about today. And again, we're at the solution part of our study, and we're really looking forward to engaging many of you to craft some really specific solutions for our community. I did it?
You get a gold medal in Presentation Olympics.
Thanks, Boss.
Yeah, that was awesome. Wondered if that would work. Did it work?
Yeah.
It worked, Allison. Well done. Okay, so I'm going to just give you a little bit of a wrap up, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. We do not have our, as I keep calling them, our technical consultants with us, and so bear with us. If we can't answer your questions, we can get to the answers for you. So first of all, I just have to honor all of the different organizations that have stepped up to help us, and you've heard them throughout this process, but it takes true leadership to really push an idea, push a conversation forward. And so not only did Town of Truckee, Placer County, Nevada County, and Watt step up, but we also had the Contractors Association, we've had the Board of Realtors, as I mentioned, we've had our school district. The Chamber has been incredible. Our resort partners have been incredible. Anybody who has had a platform that has been willing to share and push this conversation forward, make sure everybody's feeling aware, has been at the table working with us. And so for that, I thank you. The other aspect to this was really making sure that all community members are engaged, and not all of us find ourselves in Good Morning Truckee. So we had our family resource centers, both of Truckee and North Tahoe, really step up and engage our Spanish-speaking community and those families that they serve. They did a lot of what I call hand stitching on that survey. They hosted individual interviews so that families' voices could be heard in those surveys. So many of the Spanish-speaking surveys that were turned in were actually because a volunteer or one of their staff members sat down and made sure that they were included in the survey. So that's something to really raise up. I mentioned the Truckee Tahoe Community Television as partners. They've been incredible. They've been following us around, making sure that everything we do is transparent, it's out there in the community, and as I mentioned to you, have been also capturing the stories as we kind of roll along in these public forums. And then finally, the last piece of this, which actually has to do with the rollout, is our partnership with the collaborative Elevate Tahoe. And Elevate Tahoe represents Moonshine Inc., SBS Media House, and the Community Foundation. This is also another storytelling element through video. These are really kind of crafted videos. We plan for them to be focused on the solutions, the ground-up solutions, as well as a few top-down solutions. But what we plan to do is roll those out over the summer. So to the point of, why do we need another study? A study is going to sit on a shelf. How is that really going to affect us as a community? We realize that isn't really sexy to most community members, is to sit down and read a 50-page study. But we know that it's a powerful thing for our different jurisdictions to use in order to align some policy, paint some vision, and hopefully attract some capital or some dollars to the table. But on the other side, the conversation with the community can't stop. And in fact, we really need to lean in on how to engage each other. Again, both at the top-down as well as the ground-up level. And so the Elevate Tahoe videos will be a series of videos that we will release over the summer. They'll be brief, but they will raise up solutions from our community that are already working. And we believe that by launching the technical study of the housing needs in our community, by coupling that with some sexy crafted videos on solutions, that we think it'll continue to have far-reaching engagement from the community. And then you should just know that there are others that are at the table that are really trying to figure out, how do we then move forward? How do we then keep track of this? How do we then continue to engage the conversation? I don't have an answer for that right now, but I can tell you that there are a lot of us talking about, what does that look like? Okay, so I'm going to ask my team, who are embedded all in the room, have I missed anything? Okay, so with that, there's one more public forum. It's tomorrow night at Grand Lebacan. Thank you. It's in Tahoe City. One of our storytellers will feature Dr. Rob Leary from our school district, which is worth it to show up to see that. Engage with us. It's an ongoing conversation. So if things bubble up or there's a unique framing or aspect that you feel like we should know about, we invite you. That's what the Community Foundation does. We keep that conversation going. We try and maintain that neutral position so that everybody's voices can be heard. Okay, with that, Q&A, questions. Ernie.
It appears that our road infrastructure is woefully inadequate to keep adding residential units throughout the community. Has Caltrans or has road system been consulted? And tell us a little bit about that.
What I can share with you is how do I do that? Push a button? Hello? Okay. So the best I can offer on that one, Ernie, right now is that the North Tahoe Resort Association has been engaged in helping the scope of work as we rolled this out, and they're now engaging kind of on the back end. And so they have a transportation kind of aspect to their work, and so I'm hopeful that we can broker and convene those conversations and bring them into the fold. But at this point, it's not a part of our study. Yes. Okay. I'm going to let you pick, Allison, because
Okay, I'm
you're
just
kind
going to
of
go
on the
back
floor.
here. That's
Okay.
the first person I thought.
So Allison mentioned that within the North Tahoe study area, 7,400 more housing units could be developed until we reach capacity. Do we have a sense of what percentage of that number is planned or unplanned? So permitted versus, unplanned development? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It does make sense. I think that most of our work has been in getting our hands around what is available, what is left, what the housing elements contain. And so I think the hard work next is, what do you do with that information? And I think that there's an overwhelming response that we have a lot of single family units and that we need to balance that inventory out on both spectrums. So what that means from a policy standpoint in each of the jurisdictions, I can't tell you, but I think that that's going to be on the minds of a lot of our leaders in the coming months coming out of this phase.
But at the moment, we have no sense of, through city planning, what percentage of that unit there is actually permitted or planned to be developed.
We have a sense of it from the existing projects that are in the pipeline, but we don't have a prescriptive number that I'm aware of, if anybody wants to correct me, for our future. And I think that is the question that this is beginning to raise.
Dan, can I clarify, is this working? It is working. Oh, you're asking what to say. So basically this, just to clarify, this is because we're being televised, so that's what this is. It won't actually project your voice across the room, so that's why it's a little confusing. Are there other questions back here?
The study and the last numbers that were drawn, when were they pulled? Because I can tell you from being sort of in the position of helping folks find housing and property management, rents are going up monthly. Is that being considered, or do you have ideas of how much they've increased over the last year?
Our best efforts right now are from what they've drawn in this last one. Some of them are 2014, some of them are 2015. All of the resources from where they're pulling are listed, but it's a moving target, as you know. And I was just told American Community Survey is where we're getting the rental rates.
Yeah, in this presentation that we've done a lot of problem identification, but I've heard very little on real concrete solutions. And what we'd like to see in the community, I think everyone who is experiencing this issue would like to see concrete things going on rather than simply studying the study of the study, to see where the workforce housing can be built, what sort of town policies might need to change to make that happen, be it that you have to provide 50% of your new development has to be workforce housing, which is a larger percentage than it is now. The real solutions need to be more concrete, and otherwise we're going to be like North Lake Tahoe. They experienced this same problem in the early 2000s, and the problem has never been solved.
Yeah.
It's gotten worse.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think part of getting to this concrete solutions is making sure that we're all in agreement on the needs. I can tell you when we began this process that I had community members walking up to myself and my staff saying, there's not even an issue. So getting to a baseline understanding, I mean, actually, if you would indulge me 1 second. If you think there's a housing issue in this region, can you please raise your hand? Okay, so we're in agreement, mostly. That's good. Love informal polls. However, to your point about concrete solutions, I don't know what the gridlock is. I think there's some cultural stuff going on. I think there's some policy stuff going on. I think there's some financial capital that's missing. I think there's a couple institutional players that are lacking from this area that I just can't put my finger on. But we need to begin to address what this gridlock is. And the first step that we could do was to get into some kind of common agreement that yes, there is an issue, and yes, the right conversation for us to be engaging in is how to get to those concrete solutions. So I appreciate when people bring that up, because it means that there's an urgency to this, and there's a sense of collective, you know what I'm saying? There is a collective sense that this is very real. That's all. Okay. Yeah, we're 5 months into the study, which just says yes, there is a housing issue. In a month, that'll come out. Over the summer, we will have the rollout of this study. We will have some conversations and convenings with others who need to be at this table, who aren't at the table, to really try and force and push on each other, how do we collectively work? There's no one entity, no one jurisdiction who's going to solve this. It's actually going to take trust and hard work and difficult conversations among all of us. But at the same time, where I see a lot of hope is I have people approaching us who sit in those positions of power saying, we're ready. We want to engage in this conversation. In fact, I have 2 or 3 solutions that can move my board or can move my area forward. So they're coming together, they're coming up. And again, I wish I had the silver bullet, I wish I had the solution, but please know that we're committed to this conversation.
If we want to be part of the solution, who do we get involved with? I mean, who do you specifically call? Since there's so many different groups, can you direct everybody in this room to who that would be?
So, everybody kind of asks, what's the call to action? I think the first call to action is to be vocal about kind of the unique individual aspects of how it's affecting you. I think each of you serve either on inside an organization, you have an affiliation with an association, whether it's the chamber, whether it's one of our districts, to advance that conversation for us in a way that keeps it open, that keeps people engaged, to really shift it from, nothing's happened, nothing's ever going to happen, to how do we make something happen? I think that's the piece of it. And then to Allison's point in the presentation, there are a number of people thinking about who carries this forward. Is there an authority? Is there some kind of entity? I don't know the answer, but I think we're looking at, I think, Housing Authority 2.0s, learning from those that have done this work in other communities where they've done well, where they haven't, and how do we maybe either create an organization or create a way to continue to have these joint jurisdiction, joint community conversations.
I'm wondering if we've reached out to the Andy Worths and the Beth Howards of the community, just because they have a little bit more experience in housing massive amounts of people in a small amount of time. I feel like Sugar Bowl might be a little bit different, but they seem to have tried to help their employees by buying a dumpy hotel and turning it into employee housing. They sort of seem to be the only resort that's really stepped up with that. I know North Star did the whole apartment thing, but that seems to be, from what I've heard, is on like a 4-year waiting list. So someone pretty much has to, die or stop working there in order for someone else to come in. So I just want to make sure that the Andy Worths and the Beth Howards have been approached and they are involved and they want to be involved and they want to help, because they are, just those 2 people alone are, have quite a big job out here, and just want to make sure they're on board.
Absolutely. I can confirm that Greg Dallas, Beth Howard, and Andy Worth with Mike Levac are all engaged in this conversation, and were instrumental in actually getting the survey in the hands of their seasonal workforce.
I'm an outsider, Darren Dinsmore. I moved here 16 years ago as the planning director of the Sierra Business Council. Came from Canada to move to Truckee. It was a big change for me, and I think what was really interesting at that time, what was fascinating, and I went around and worked with communities throughout the Sierra and throughout the West, was that Truckee was a real mountain town, and it was split 50-50 between locals and visitors. And I think I would encourage you to step back. I think what you're doing is great, but the connection between housing and jobs is critical. I had to move away because my career took me away, and I'd like to come back now that I have an online service and I can service my clients from anywhere. But it took me 7, 8 years to build that business. And if you just focus on housing, you're not going to create complete communities, complete neighborhoods, supportive housing, an area where people can age in place. If you just look at the product of housing, this is about building a community of Truckee and what is the future of the community of Truckee. And I just worry, and I think it's great, but like I'm working with Park City on housing right now. Don't look towards cities that have already tipped to 65, 75% second homeowners and look to them towards solutions. You're not there yet. Truckee's still a real town. Look for solutions of towns that are real towns, okay? Or else you're just going to head in the same direction of those towns that have already gentrified themselves. That's just a thought.
Thank you. I have no comment. We have one more question.
We have time for questions. We still have more time. Yeah.
Kind of hidden in the back. So moving here from Kansas City, I was in the same position of a young working professional, couldn't find a place to live. I know many of us were in that same situation. So my heart goes out to people that are moving to our community that have a great job and they can't find anywhere to live. So my question is, in the immediate small scale solution, recently my fiance and I bought a house and we have a garage that is able to be built out. So we had a contractor friend come over to give us kind of a quote, and he said, oh yeah, by the way though, have you talked to the town about permitting and everything else, because that's what's really going to hold you up. So we had no idea that A, the contracting work was going to cost X amount. Fine, that's budgeted. Oh, but P.S., did you know that the town and everything that you have to split up, if you do it correctly, is also equally as much? So I guess my question is, what can we do for that, for people that have the space right now, people that have the budget right now to do the build out or the construction, but there's this sort of other huge chunk that, no, that's not budgeted. So is that a conversation?
So I can tell you nobody's brought up fees, special districts, how they work, how they hold people back. Nobody's brought that up. But I think you're unique. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's absolutely a common theme that we're finding in these meetings. Absolutely. I gotta also say that our special districts who have been engaged and our town who's been engaged, this is no surprise to them. This is no new criticism that's been met. We've had some amazing advocates who've taken on the podium throughout these and really talked about some of the challenges of being a homeowner. We recognize that a lot of our homeowners are having to come up with these creative solutions so they can actually afford their mortgage. But then when they find the creative solution to invite, because everybody wants to be a landlord, right? To invite, to go for that, how it's just cost prohibitive and it doesn't pencil. We had a landowner who has 4 tiny houses that were built during the Olympics in Kings Beach for workforce housing to build the Olympics, and now it's time for those to go bye-bye because they're old and exhausted and ready to be raised, and she has a choice to make. Does she just put a for sale sign up and go into retirement, or does she kind of pay 4 times the amount of fees because she wants to put small tiny homes on one lot, 4 times the amount that the 40,000 or the 4,000 square foot home across from her that sits vacant is paying? And so yes, we hear it, we know it, we're here to let you raise that up. That whole neutral convening piece is the role that we welcome. We know that everybody in the room has a different agenda, and every association that bellies up to this conversation has a different agenda, and we see that as healthy. We feel like if we can, maybe many of you recognize the Speak Your Piece campaign that the Community Foundation rolled out many years ago. We feel like everybody's voice should be heard, but it should be heard in a way that is productive and respectful. And so, yes, thank you for bringing that up, and it is concerning for us. And I wasn't trying to be flippant when I said that we hadn't heard it. I was just trying to break a little bit of the tension, because this is a tough conversation, and it affects people in a very real way.
1 minute.
1 minute.
This is quick, maybe a long answer, but housing tends to be a very stable long-term investment. Has the Community Foundation had any conversations or explored opportunities to aggregate community capital for an investment fund to look at solutions?
We should talk. Yeah, you know, I think to your point, oftentimes we look to our own community to solve the capital problems associated with the solutions that are going to be required. And, you know, it's a little bit like squeezing water out of a rock. And I do know that there are some responsibilities that we have as a community have to capitalize, if you will, the vision of our community. But I also believe that there are other forms of capital, to your point out there, that are integrated public-private partnerships with a blend of philanthropic that need to get explored. And that's really kind of a piece of what perhaps an entity might lead with. We're not sure. But Kristen, I welcome those conversations. So with that, I think that is our time. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Big shout out for Stacy and Allison and everybody that's involved in this process. So some of you may know that there's an election coming up. And Bernie was in Sacramento yesterday. I think I saw in the news. I looked at the ballots and sample ballots in Placer, Nevada County. Get a chance to vote for Ted Cruz and the great Donald, and some names that we haven't seen for a while or have been seeing for a while, but won't be seeing much more. But anyway, all that's coming up. So what we want to do is get out the vote, and we have a perfect pair of folks to talk about that, and that's Mary Jane Hoonegard, did I get that right? And Justin Sternberg from the League of Women Voters of Western Nevada County. 5 minutes, here we go. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. I realize it's hard to change gears so dramatically after a housing presentation this early in the morning, but we'll do our best. So we represent the League of Women Voters of Western Nevada County. It is a national organization that does education of voters and advocacy of issues, especially those pertaining to voting rights. We have been working in the community to educate people on local issues as housing. We've had monthly meetings. So right now we're holding forums representing the different candidates. We invite the candidates to come and answer questions asked by audience members and media. We also have forums for the different ballot measures that are on the ballot right now, Measure Y and Measure W specifically. Measure W is coming up. That should be a fun one. I'm actually moderating. So we are, right now, we're working on getting out the vote. We believe that we have a shot as a county of being the #1 voting county in the state of California. So I gave this voting presentation to a group of 8th graders recently, and I called on everyone. I said, what do you guys think it means to be a good citizen? And they gave me these wonderful answers. So living in an environmentally good way, voting, and they were all very excited to be going off to high school and having an opportunity to be members of the student council and be really involved and own what their community was. And you guys all understand this. You're very involved in the community. You volunteer. You're working with nonprofits that are changing the community in lots of ways. The thing is, you're 18. Maybe you'll go register to vote when you're 18. But as a young person in your 20s, you may not be quite as engaged and active as would be ideal. It takes life experience. It takes years, really, on average, to realize the power of voting and the importance of voting. So how can we change this? How can we engage young people to care about voting and to see that it actually does make an impact? We have engaged with a young guy named Kipchoge Spencer, who has a startup called Take2.org that manages campaigns online. And here to talk about the work of Take2 and our partnership with them is Justin Sternberg.
always nice to speak to our county's better half. We don't have a community foundation in Western Nevada County, but someday we'll get there. Take Two is a local organization that we partnered with to do something different with social media and try to get people to pledge to vote. And I'd encourage you all to take out your phone right now and take a look at this website up here, which is take2.org/campaigns/NC votes, and sign up there. We're asking people to pledge to vote and also to sign up other people to vote and get their friends engaged as well. And we just launched this, so it's fresh, and you have until May 23rd to register to vote for the June 7th primaries. And so in addition to that, we've also placed voter registration forms on all of the tables and out at the front table as well, and are asking all of you if you could take those back to your businesses, take them to your friends and family, and get them to vote. Western Nevada County and Truckee are tied at the hip politically and have a lot to benefit from working together, which is why we've driven all the way up here to talk to you guys today. And housing in particular, there's a lot in common there. And I think the more we can engage one another, the better. So getting involved in the political process is very important. And we think that it's possible if we can get 1,500 people to pledge to vote and get a total of 3,000 new voters in the county, that we could actually be the #1 voter turnout in California. So that would be, it's happened before, and it would be great to see it happen again. So we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane and Justin, and good stuff. We do want to get out to vote, and I see there's a whole stack of forms. If you haven't registered and there aren't enough out on the table. So we have another 5-minute presentation, and this is from Judy Price, our extraordinaire town clerk, and going to talk about running for office. So you can put down your cell phones now and listen to Judy.
Good morning, Truckee. I feel a little bit like I'm preaching to the choir in this room, because as the introductions happened, there were a lot of people that already represent multiple hats, special districts, along with their own businesses. I feel like Truckee thrives and survives on that kind of leadership and participation. So thought I'd ask you a simple question. For those of you who haven't run for an office, what holds you back? What's that? So how many elected officials are there in the agencies that serve the Truckee area? There are prizes. Hold your hand up, take a guess. There are prizes. 45. Who was the first one to say 45? Ted. 45. Win a prize. Yeah. You think you know? How long does it take to file the necessary documents to run for a special district? Somebody raise your hand and tell me something. I can give a prize to. Go ahead. 5 minutes? A little short. 15? You? 4.5. Who's got 1 hour going on? Pretty close. About 45 minutes. Whoops. Shoot. Dang, I got help. 45 minutes to an hour to file the necessary documents to run for a special district. Now that I can tell you, running for council for the town of Truckee, we want a little more of your time, and we require that that you get at least 20 signatures of your friends and neighbors that really want to see you run for office. So you have to be nominated by 20 folks to run for that office. There's ample opportunity for sure for folks to participate. So how much money does it take to launch a campaign for a special district here in Truckee? So I think Randy's right. Most of them spend under $1,000 to run for a special district office. Now I can tell you, of course, the town of Truckee is a little different. We're a little more expensive. So it takes about $2,500 on average to run for office. I will give you a little caveat here. That's campaign signs, doing whatever you need to campaign. There is no charge in Nevada County or the town of Truckee to file to run for office. But there is a charge if you want to print your statement of qualifications in your voter handbook that comes out. And that's all based on how many voters you're going to reach. I find it to be the least expensive way to reach every voter that you can reach. So, of the agencies serving Truckee, what's the average number of hours that you're going to spend in meetings? A year. A year. Give me hands. 25.
75.
4.
48.
We'll say 48 wins it. There is, okay, this is going to 52.5. Now, so Randy's and then this one's yours. That's a year. That's a year. That's a year. 52.5. So if you look at the spreadsheets that are provided at the tables, you'll see the special districts that are in our region, that you'll see the time they meet, you'll see how many hours and how many meetings they schedule. This doesn't include study time, but let's give you some perspective on that. You spend over 1,700 hours on your phone every year. You spend over $1,200 on your on watching TV. So 52 hours a year, not a huge commitment. Some are as low as 24. Take a look at the opportunities given. So I'm running out of time here. Find your passion. Participate and vote. If you've moved recently, those people that have to move consistently, register. Register before May 23rd for that June 7th primary. You can vote currently at Town Hall. We have early voting open. It started yesterday. So if you're vote now, wait for your mail ballot, but vote for sure. Find your passion. There are tons of ways to volunteer in addition to running for office. There are boards, commissions, committees, people that come together to talk about housing. Some talk about tax measures, all these things. So find your passion, participate in your community. I put down here, be a leader. You are leaders. It's obvious that you all participate in many different ways already, but find your passion and for sure try and participate. Okay, any questions?
Well, thank you very much for coming. It's a good session today.